Hello and welcome to another episode of Bread-a-licious. Today, multigrain bread. A nice wholesome option for your multiple different bread needs. So let's talk about a few things. You have our pate ferment, which we're about to do, so I'm going to stir that together real quick. And be sure to get the corners. But another thing too is now I included in this multigrain bread oats, flax seeds, sunflower seeds, and bulgur. But you can also do different ones. You can do sesame if you wanted to. You could do rye chops if you wanted to. Even pumpkin seeds if you wanted to. Just be aware that they would be quite big in your bread. Some millet even. Do a grain mixture of your own. Just look up and do a little bit of your own research, because the grains have to soak in water. So depending on grains, if you want to add or take away how many grains go into your bread, you'll also want to change how much water that the soaker has. Alrighty, and I'm pulling, and I've gotten our pate ferment together. Get all that goodness in there. Alrighty, and again, should look like that. Okay, and that's perfectly fine. Alright, that's perfectly good fine. Just make sure it's semi-flat because it's going to relax anyway. So that is ready. This is what our pate ferment turned into. See how sticky that is? That is a good starter right there. And you can see the bubbles. Isn't that fascinating? I also love smelling starters. It's a very nice smell. And it's, way to test it to make sure it's working. All right, next, this is what our soaker looks like. So I put the grains in here and let the water soak for at least 1.5 to 2 hours so that they puff up. Okay, so to make our dough, I'm gonna add our flour mixture. I'm gonna go ahead and add our grains in there. Kind of get that going just a little bit. Okay, once I feel like that's starting to come together and flour won't go everywhere on me, I'll add our starter that has rested overnight. Typically I go at least 16 hours. And that's looking pretty good. Scoop it out. Then I'm gonna fold it in. Soak up some of that water. Okay, then I'm gonna put it on the table. Okay, gotten that. Get in there. Oh yeah. Now this seems dry at first compared to some of the other doughs we do, but that's because of the soaker. So what happens is I'll need this for a couple minutes just to get it together. So we'll need this for about 4 to 5 minutes. And then we'll let it bulk rest for 2 hours. And we'll be back. So what a soaker is, everyone, is in bread, you don't want to throw the grains in dry, because then they absorb the moisture and your bread can be dry. So how you solve this issue is taking your grains, putting water in them, and letting them absorb the moisture for an hour or two. And this allows them to hydrate so that they don't dry out and they're chewable within your bread. It is a great burning prevention. And that's what a soaker is. Alright, so I want to talk about how to do starters and proper containers to store them in. Understand that, and I see this a lot with my sourdough fans, is they use glass jars. I'm always going to say, maybe not do that. Understand that when you make a starter, it can quadruple in size. And for those who are fans of sourdough, that's something you constantly have to feed. When the yeast is eating at the proteins in the flour, it farts, it creates gas, creates CO2. That increases the gas amount. So even with the plastic containers, I've had the lids bellow up on me before. When you use glass and it has that tight-fitting lid, there's nowhere for the air to go. And the fact that it quadruples in size and then has all that gas, it can actually break the glass, and then your starter is ruined. There are some tricks to where you can overlap it and put some cheesecloth and maybe do a rubber band, but even then it can sometimes escape, and there are separate problems with that. And with the sourdoughs, if it quadruples in size, it can still burst through the glass. So I recommend not using glass containers for starters. And for that matter, although it's not glass, I've also seen someone try to do a starter in a Ziploc bag and the bag burst on them. So don't do that either. Plastic lids are perfectly acceptable. The other thing too is if for some reason you're checking on it. Let's say you started it at night and it's slightly open in the morning. That's okay. Air just let out. The starter was still covered. You closed it and you have a safe starter to use without having a whole starter gone or oxidized because it was exposed to too much air. Like, you can't leave a starter exposed openly, but if you have the lid on and it just popped a little overnight, you shut it. It's fine. You can check for a skin, but there's very rarely going to be one there. Okay? And that is my suggestion. Use plastic containers with lids, and always pick a plastic container, because when I put it in the container, the starter was only at this line, and mine almost tripled in size. It actually did triple. This is after I opened the lid and it relaxed. So that's something to keep in mind. Your starter will triple in size, so you need to measure accordingly. Okay? Alrighty, let's get checking on our loaves. Okay, so our multigrain has rested for 2 hours, and you're gonna love this, guys. Look at how poofy that got. Oh yeah, that's super nice. Look at that, all those grains in there. Okay, well, let's dig it out. Scrape that out. And then if you want to do a scrape out, you can just tip and go in there. And you don't have to do it like I do. I do it like that so you can see it. I'm usually doing this when I'm at home by myself. The thing about breads is, even if you don't always have a ton of time to do them, it's great to do every once in a while. And they make great presentations when someone's doing dinner. When you bring, like for me, my family, I'll constantly be making bread for our holiday meals, and that is always appreciated. So it's a labor of love for the ones that you love, and that's just a good way to live, I think. But here to warn you, you will end up doing this really good for your family. You're going to be the bread person from here on out. Once you do that, they always ask when the next one's going to be, so prepare for that. And again, I don't necessarily like to weigh it out when I'm only doing 2 loaves, so I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to make sure my bannock tin cloths are well floured. A little bit more on the edge there. Saw a non-floury spot. Always feel free to double check. You have more time than you think you do. And if you ever don't add flour and you have to pull the bread because it's sticky, it's a mess. So I'm just doing my tight rolls. Lap those over, tight. Shape them, pinch. Really seal it really good, do a reshape. That's looking pretty good. I'm gonna put that in there. And again, and just so y'all can see what I'm doing, do the flop, pinch to the side, pinch, flip. Check. Shaped. Very good. One might be slightly longer than the other, but that's okay. Always forgive yourself when things aren't perfect in baking. Remember, you're learning, you're having fun, you're woo-sawing in the kitchen. It's all you. So we're gonna let these rise for about an hour, sometimes an hour 15, depending on how warm your house is, and we will be back. Okay everyone, so I got a few comments and I wanted to address loaf pans. Loaf pans are ideal for quick breads, but they can be used for our artisan breads if you wish. But there's a few caveats, so I wanted to go over them. So you still want your baking stone heating, okay? However, we have two metal ones and a ceramic, okay? The issue with our method is you can't put the ceramic on the hot stone or in the hot oven unless you take the risk of it cracking. The issue is the 400 degree mark. When it's at 350, it doesn't hurt too much. But at 450, sometimes it can be a little weird. So what I've seen some people do is they'll heat this up in the oven with the baking stone, and then they carefully pull it out. And if they're doing a smaller proof loaf, drop it in to get that rise. Nothing wrong with that. Sometimes what they will do is let this get to a certain temperature. Let's say they'll have two ovens, or they have a toaster oven, and they put this in the oven at like 200 some degrees, so there's not such a jump and spike, but it's still warm. So there's a few tricks. We haven't tested them in our kitchens yet with the Artisan Baker's Laboratory, but it's something to just be mindful of. Those, again, are theories I've heard of, but like I said, for our artisan breads, this may not be the best one. Next, we have our two metal ones. Either one of these are fine. This one has thinner metal, so putting it on the stone is not as big of a deal. It'll get to the bread just fine, and it has handles. Just understand that the bread can sometimes go over, and then you get this marking, which is why I wanted to bring another pan to the stage, because you can still have your oven mitts on and hold it pretty well with that lip. It's a little bit thicker, but again, thin enough and made of metal to transfer heat well. So you can let your loaf of bread in here, let it rise in the pan, and then pop it in the oven when it's ready and risen. And again, this is still pretty cool. You have something to grasp onto, and it's not overly thick. But as you can see, there is a thickness difference between the two. Even with the lip, it's still thicker than this guy. That's something to keep in mind when you're considering loaf pans for your breads. Alright, so that is our loaf pan review. Let's check on our bread. Okay, so our multigrain is definitely proofed. This one might have overproofed on us. Let's see. Okay, that one didn't, and it's not sinking. That's great. We're gonna move. So there's a few different artistic cuts you can do. I want to go over a common one that's happening with those large round ones, is they just do a nice heavy cut in the center. Okay, so that's one option. We're going to put that in the oven, see how that goes. And then next, we're gonna plop this guy. But you can also do a leaf tree thing. So just slice and then do little snippets. And we'll see how that turns out. And then I'm gonna add my 1/4 cup of water, and then we'll be right back. Okay, so our multigrain bread has taken about 30 minutes. Hold on, let me do the, yeah, that's good, that's good. Now that's slightly dark on the bottom, but that's okay. And I want to point out something. So see these dark sunflower seeds? That's something I forgot to mention. If you're going to use sunflower seeds, make sure they are untoasted. You want raw sunflower seeds. Because if they were pre-toasted, those would be very burnt in our bread, and we do not want that. And if you don't necessarily like a flour extra, you can always brush it off. Get a dry, natural bristle brush, dry that off. Technically, just to show you, even this guy that you use to take care of your board, will get the job done. It's actually kind of cool. It's like your shoe shining your bread. But anyway, that's all we have for our Bread-a-licious on our episode of Multigrain Bread. Hope you enjoy. This is great with jam. And until next time, y'all.